Okay, I had senior moments, I'm just letting you know. But this is a tour to the base of the mountain. You'll be about 900 feet away from the mountain. You'll be able to get off the bus and take pictures. I'll try to answer questions and give you a little bit of the history of the Crazy Horse Memorial. This area that we're going through right now, we call it the boneyard because it's full of old derelict machinery. Some of it is still used. Do we have any car enthusiasts on here today? Anybody like to rebuild old cars? All right, we'll look over here. You see some of these old trucks and things. I love to drag a couple out of there and fix them up. That old yellow one, maybe. Oh yeah, and there's a Jeep back there. There's a car back there too. I'm dying to find out what it is. It's back in the corner back in that. Yeah. This hole that you see in the mountain up here took 2 years to blast through. This mountain was nothing like this. If you see the gray rock up here, it was all that gray rock across. Fort Chalk took 2 years to blast that hole through the mountain. It's 40 feet tall, 25 feet wide. He said it was some of the hardest work that he'd ever done. The granite here is called pegmatite granite. It's full of iron and it's super hard. But in 1947, when Fort Chalk came out here, just imagine the gray area being all the way across. And he climbed that mountain. He was suspended by a 1-inch rope. He had a radio strapped to his chest. He had a 1-gallon paint gallon of paint strapped to his belt, and a regular house paint brush. Ruth, they weren't married yet. Ruth was in the parking lot. They had a drawing of what the carving would look like. Fort Chalk's on the mountain. Ruth is telling him on the radio, we'll paint a little over here, paint a little over here. I guess he was a husband in training because he followed her directions and he painted the whole sculpture on the side of the mountain. Fort Chalk said that he was sad and he was glad at the same time. He was sad because when he got done, he thought that when people came out, they'd see that and think, well, that's a big deal. That's all it is, just an Indian on a horse painted on the side of a rock. But he was glad at the same time because Ruth didn't ask him to put a second coat of paint up there. It took him 176 gallons of paint to paint that up there. The lines were 6 feet wide. Fort Chalk was born in 1908. I have to make sure I enunciate his name correctly. It's spelled K-O-R-Z-A-C-K. We think Korzak, but in Polish it's Fort Chalk. And some guy asked me last week, how come his name was Pork Chop? No, it's not Pork Chop, it's Fort Chalk. Anyway, he was born in 1908. His parents died when he was a year old. He spent a lot of time in the orphanages. He was eventually adopted by a man who was an Irish boxer, so he had a really rough life. 16 years old, he enrolled in the Ranch Technical School and he became a pattern maker in a shipyard in Boston. Fort Chalk always had an eye for building things and making things. One of his favorite things to do was to make furniture, and he designed and made a grandfather clock out of mahogany. There was a judge in Boston that heard about him, kind of befriended him and introduced him to the people in the arts. And so Fort Chalk became a self-taught painter and sculptor. Fort Chalk died in 1982, and his tomb is in this clearing. You'll see this pole right up here, this power pole. If you look back in the back, there's a picnic table back in there. He designed that tomb before he died. He died of acute pancreatitis in 1982. He died up in Sturgis. If you look way back in the back of the woods, there's a picnic table you can see kind of through this little clearing right here. His tomb is back there to the right, and Ruth died. His wife died in 2014 of cancer, and she's buried back there too. Ruth met Fort Chalk when she was 13 years old. She was living up in New England, and she and a girlfriend heard that Fort Chalk had a Hollywood movie star staying at his studio. So as teenage girls do, they wanted this movie star's autograph, so they dared each other to call Fort Chalk and see if they could come over. And they did, and he said, hey, come on over. So they got the guy's autograph. She met him again when she was 15 years old. When he was designing or doing the statue of Daniel Webster, she helped him raise money for that also. In 1947, when Fort Chalk came out here, Ruth followed him out here. And eventually they got married. They had 10 children, 5 girls and 5 boys. All the boys helped him work on the mountain. The girls helped Ruth run the 2 sawmills, the dairy, and the visitor center. Fort Chalk enlisted in the Army when he was 34 years old, and he landed in Omaha Beach in Normandy. He was wounded in action, discharged as a sergeant. And he came back to the United States to begin this sculpture right here, the statue, or this memorial. In the movie you will have heard something about one of his sons named Casimir. Casimir's running the bulldozer up on the side of the mountain and the brakes failed on it. It sailed 70 feet off the mountain, landed in a pile of rocks. Casimir bailed off of it and landed the only pile of soft dirt that he could find. Korchak, being the concerned father that he was, went over to make sure his son was okay. Casimir got up, was dusting himself off. Korchak looked, okay, so you're going to get it out of the mountain. So that old bulldozer is right here. We use it as a museum piece right now. Hasn't run in many years. When Korchak came out here in 1947, he bought this property. It's about 100 acres. It included this mountain. It's called Thunderhead Mountain because of the cloud formations that form over it sometimes. And Korchak said he knew that he'd have to file a mining claim in order to be able to own the mountain and to do the carving on it. A mining claim on this property for Micah. They lived in this old shack right here. Well, when Korchak came back out, he found his father and son living there. He reasoned with him. I guess he made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So the guy eventually sold him the mining rights, but Korchak said, you know, you can live here as long as you like, you and your son. And so the man did until he died, and the son actually drilled water wells on the property and worked in the gift shop also. All this rock you see on the side of the hill has either been blasted or cut off the mountain. It has to go somewhere. We encourage people to take as much of it home as you possibly can. They do crush it, and you can see they put some in here for the road. There's piles of gravel there. But back up there where that little bobcat is, one of the sons, Adam, goes back there. Matter of fact, the old brown truck, he's got a pile of rocks in it right now. And he takes that into the visitor center under the covered porch, and he dumps it in there for people like y'all to take it home. So I'm going to pull up to this far box up here. You'll be able to get off. We ask that you stay inside the orange cones of this yellow line. There's buses that come by here and security vehicles and things like that. We don't want anybody to get run over. I haven't lost anybody yet, and I don't want to start today. A good vantage point to get pictures is on a flat rock that's right back here. So let me hop off here, move the step up so you can get off, and then you'll be able to take pictures and have a good time.
When we get off here.
Say that.
Oh, sorry. Are we gonna get it? Yep. Hold on.
You were going.
I don't have a phone. Maybe we get to see the old truck. Let's go. We get to see everything.